There's a strange comfort in loving something that's broken, something that never quite fit the mold it was meant to fill. Dark Souls 2 isn't the fan favorite. It's often referred to as the black sheep of the Soulsborne family, a game weighed down by janky mechanics, insane runbacks, and a world that feels more fragmented than interconnected. But for me, Dark Souls 2 is something special. It's the one I always find myself returning to. When I think of the magic of Majula, or the drowning settlement of the Iron Keep, I'm taken back to a time when exploration felt endless and discovery felt deeply immersive. This isn't going to be a video arguing that Dark Souls 2 is the best game in the series. It's about why, in its imperfections, it is my favorite entry among the entire Soulsborne catalog. My judgment may be a little clouded by nostalgia, but overall I know that Dark Souls 2 does not deserve all the hate that it gets. This game was my gateway drug into the series, and for that it will always hold a special place in my heart. Before we dive into the video though, if you like this type of content, please feel free to drop a like on the video and consider subscribing to help support the channel, or you will be cursed to do an NG plus 10 run only with a broken handmaid's ladle. With that, let's take a closer look at the atmosphere of Dark Souls 2. The atmosphere of Dark Souls 2 is unlike any of the other games in the series. From your first steps into Majula to the crumbling pathways of Hyde's Tower of Flame, you realize you're not in an environment like the first game. You're somewhere lonelier, quieter, and much sadder. Majula is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, hubs in all of gaming. It truly has everything you need, including serenity, the ability to level up, a blacksmith to improve your weapons and armor, a merchant, a talking cat, and a haunted mansion. I mean, come on, what is there not to love about this place? But then again, Majula is also responsible for bringing us this hood classic. Majula isn't bustling with life or grandiose in its design. It feels abandoned and forgotten. This sense of melancholy is one of the major themes across the world of Drangleic, creating an atmosphere that's less about constant danger and more about slow decay. Drangleic feels like a world long past saving, and yet beauty is still found in the least likely of places. The atmosphere is built by audio design as much as visual. The ambient noises, the distant crash of waves, the soft whistling of wind, the lonely crackle of a bonfire make the world feel alive in its own fading way. Music is used sparingly throughout Drangleic, and when it does appear, it's often subtle and tasteful, adding on to that feeling of solitude. Places like the Shaded Wood with subtle environmental noise, or the Shrine of Amana with its haunting songs drifting over the water, turn exploration into something almost meditative. You're not just pushing forward for the next boss fight, you're wandering through the dying memory of the Drangleic Kingdom. As with every other civilization in Dark Souls, what once stood strong is now fading away with the flame. Now we do need to adequately address the soundtrack of Dark Souls 2. It does not do it justice to simply say, it's good. This is one of the most beautiful OSTs that belongs to a video game. This is the cream of the crop. This is whatever the hell goes above S tier. I'm more so also referring to the more ambient tracks here, but boss tracks are also pretty incredible as well. Comparing much of the Drangleic settlements to Anor Londo, a grandiose city frozen at its peak, the architecture of Dark Souls 2 tells a much sadder story. The castles here aren't grand monuments to gods, they're crumbling relics, half sunken into oceans or melting into rivers of lava. Drangleic Castle looms not as a symbol of power, but as a tomb, battered by endless rain and darkness. Anor Londo felt tragic because it had fallen from grace, whereas the world of Dark Souls 2 feels like it's just been completely forgotten and left in abandon. You're not exploring the ruins of something once perfect, you're sifting through the ashes of something that was never meant to last. That feeling becomes deeply impactful. Dark Souls 2 doesn't frame you as a great chosen one destined to save the world. You're just another one who bears the curse. You are not special, nobody anticipates that you're gonna make it. Everyone expects you to continue hollowing until death. You are trying to do this alone, and yet in that loneliness, there's this strange comfort. It's like the game is telling you it's okay to feel lost. It's okay to wander. For me, it's that haunting, bittersweet tone that makes Dark Souls 2's atmosphere linger long after the game itself is over. And as you wander through this decaying world, it's not just the landscape that carries that heavy, broken feeling. The boss fights do too. The bosses of Dark Souls 2 aren't just challenges to overcome, they're not just skill checks. They're reflections of a kingdom that's long since lost its purpose, and fighting them feels less like conquering and more like putting old legends to rest. In the game, you are a human that is afflicted with a curse. This curse causes you not to die, but to progressively go more through a process called hollowing. Hollowing makes you decay both physically and mentally, with the wiki defining hollowing simply as a gradual loss of free will. To alleviate this curse, you travel to a faraway kingdom known as Drangleic in search of the cure. However, the cure is not found upon your arrival. As you traverse further and further into the kingdom, you come across enemies, bosses, and eventually the owners of great souls. You continually fight your way through the areas until acquiring all 4 great souls and being able to unlock the passage to Drangleic Castle. As you continue through Drangleic in subsequent areas, killing the bosses that stand in your way, you happen upon the king of the land, Vendrick. Although Vendrick is currently in the process of hollowing. His physical appearance is malnourished, his skin is decaying, open flesh wounds are present all over his body, and his eyes are a piercing blank stare. His mind has been completely lost, wandering aimlessly through his boss arena. Yet he does not attack you upon entering his chamber and taking his ring. He only becomes aggressive after you've done enough damage to him. It appears as though the only thing remaining in his mental capabilities is the ability to swing his sword, and he is definitely still a viable threat. Once you steal his ring though, you are able to approach the Throne of Want and fight the final bosses, the Throne Watcher, Throne Defender, and ultimately Queen Nashandra. However, Vendrick does not need to be killed. You can take his ring, he will not attack you, and you can just walk right out of his arena. The story of Dark Souls 2 is reminiscent of Dark Souls 1. The player fights their way through the holders of great souls, progresses through the kingdom, and ultimately faces the final boss of the game. After Nashandra is killed, the bearer of the curse approaches the throne and they are faced with a decision. Relink the flame and continue this current cycle, or let the flame fade and bring in an era of darkness. The bearer of the curse's choice is unknown to us though, as we are only shown the bearer of the curse taking the throne and then the game ends, fading to the credit scene. However, in Scholar of the First Sin, another ending option becomes available. In this alternative ending, the bearer of the curse can walk away from it all, refusing the throne and seeking another fate. No matter what choice is made, what follows is always the same. You progress to New Game Plus, but in terms of the storyline, the cycle repeats itself. The bearer of the curse finds himself, or herself, following their fate to Drangleic to pursue the throne yet again. What makes the story of all these games hit even harder is how cyclical it all feels. No matter how strong you become, no matter how many times you go through the cycle, the ending of Dark Souls 2 isn't about triumph, it's about inevitability. You can sit upon the throne and link yourself to the endless cycle of death and rebirth, or you can simply walk away, leaving it all behind. Either way, the cycle will continue. It's a story not about glory, but about acceptance, of loss, of forgetting, and of the small, flickering persistence to keep going anyway. Yes, I am aware that all the other Souls games have this same cyclical nature, but where Dark Souls 2 differs is that it offers this third choice, to not even take the throne. Yet even in your freedom of choice, it is all an illusion. No matter what option you choose, the outcome remains the same. The cycle always continues. A new bearer of the curse arises after hundreds or thousands of years to harvest the 4 great souls and seek the Throne of Want. This is why New Game Plus is so effective in all games, Dark Souls 2 especially included. You don't just get to play through the game again with your current stats and gear, the cycle is a natural part of the story. And yes, I understand this is a rather elementary story explanation and I am no means an expert on the storyline. If you want a more in-depth guide or deep dive of the story of Dark Souls 2, I highly recommend that you check out VatiVidya's videos on the story. I've linked his Dark Souls 2 playlist in the description if you'd like to go check it out. The bosses of Dark Souls 2 aren't the absolute best in the series, but I think DS2 has a ton of really cool boss designs and mechanics. I wanted to highlight some of my favorite, as well as some of the mechanics that I think were innovative, even if they weren't received very well. The Pursuer is a relatively simple boss, a melee-focused enemy with a big sword, a big shield, and the ability to float. His moveset mostly consists of slashing and stabbing attacks, but every so often he'll trigger an attack where his sword glows blue and he thrusts it at you. Hey, yo! If you're hit with this, he picks you up, curses you, and slams you into the ground. The curse reduces your maximum HP by hollowing you 1 level, effectively stripping you of your humanity if you were human when the fight started. Additionally, after your first encounter, you'll find multiple mini-boss versions of the Pursuer throughout the game. Killing these versions can reward you with extra items that are very useful depending on your build. Some of his spawn points include the basement area in the Lost Bastille and the boss arena for the Smelter Demon after he's defeated. The Looking Glass Knight features a really neat mechanic where, when he slams his shield down, he can summon an NPC to fight alongside him. However, if you're connected online and there's someone using a red eye orb in Drangleic Castle, the Looking Glass Knight can summon an actual player to help him. I think this mechanic is really cool in concept, but oh my god, it can get annoying so fast if you keep getting your ass kicked by another player on top of already struggling with a boss that's not exactly super easy. Mytha the Baneful Queen's boss arena is initially covered in a pool of poison. To remove this poison, you have to burn a specific windmill, stopping the poison pumps and effectively giving you some dry land to fight her on. Fighting her while poisoned makes the encounter extremely difficult, but once the poison is gone, the fight becomes much more manageable. The Lost Sinner's boss room is completely shrouded in darkness, making it very hard to lock onto her. If she gets more than about 10 feet away, the lock-on breaks, which makes tracking her fast movements much more difficult. She also leaves very small openings between attacks, creating tough challenges of learning the correct timing. This, in my opinion, represents Souls boss at their best. I'm not a huge fan of the super tanky bosses like the Ancient Dragon. I personally prefer fighting bosses that are mechanically much more well-designed. Another mechanically excellent boss in Dark Souls 2 is the Smelter Demon. Not only does he look incredibly awesome, but his moveset feels extremely fluid. Fighting the Smelter Demon feels like a true duel between evenly matched opponents if you can learn his timing. Otherwise, it feels like you are just getting absolutely wrecked by a giant, terrifying iron golem. Some honorable mentions for great aesthetic boss design in my opinion include the Rotten, Old Iron King, Flexile Sentry, Velstadt, and King Vendrick. These bosses excel visually. They may not stand out mechanically, but they are absolutely not poorly designed either. Yes, I know the game definitely has its fair share of terrible bosses, but most of them would fall into the A or B tier if I had to rank them. There's a lot in variety of design, mechanical innovation, and challenge, even if the bosses in DS2 aren't the absolute standouts in the series. Dark Souls 2 made a lot of mechanical innovations over Dark Souls 1, many of which would go on to be implemented in future titles. Let's get the easy target out of the way first, ADP and agility. I'm going to provide a rather toasty take on ADP. I don't think it's all too bad. Yes, I do think your starting agility level is trash and that needs to be leveled first. However, if you so desire, you can continue leveling ADP and subsequently your agility to achieve a longer roll packed with more iframes than what is available in Dark Souls 1. If you're watching this video, you probably understand iframes, but just in case you don't know, when you roll in any Dark Souls game, you have a certain amount of invincibility frames or iframes. Essentially, for fractions of a second, even though an enemy's weapon appears to touch you, you take no damage. Everyone compares this to the set amount of iframes from Dark Souls 1, which is 11, to the system that starts you out with 6. But with a little time and dedication, you can easily get your iframes to 11 by getting your agility stat to 96. But if you want to be extra and keep leveling ADP, you can get more iframes per roll than what was initially thought possible. You can get up to 17 iframes per roll, but you have to level an insane amount of ADP and attunement since they both affect the agility stat. Now that we've already taken a ragged dead horse and turned it into a fine paste, let's go on to some more fun innovations. The humanity and hollowing system in Dark Souls 2 is one that I much prefer over Dark Souls 1. In DS1, you can find consumable humanity items that, when used, add 1 humanity into your bank found in the top left and a good amount of health. To become human, you have to burn one of these banked humanities at a bonfire, and upon death, you could actually retrieve your banked humanity if you find your bloodstain. This had no effect on your health and would just change your ability to summon friends or partake in some jolly PvP. In DS2, you have a consumable item, the human effigy, which would turn you human until you died. Upon death, you lose 5% of your maximum HP and your character model starts to decay. As you continue dying, the HP loss and bodily decay continue accumulating either until you are at 50% maximum HP or until you use a human effigy. This system matches the lore of hollowing perfectly as your curse slowly drains the physical and mental capabilities of the bearer. The only thing that keeps the bearer of the curse from fully hollowing is the human effigies that provide temporary relief. The bosses you kill, the souls you collect, and the thrones you usurp provide you with no remedy to cure this affliction. Your only choice is to try and hold on to whatever thread of humanity you have left. Bonfire ascetics are a new item that can be burned at bonfires to make the area increase by 1 New Game Plus level. So for example, after I've killed the Dragon Rider by cheesing him at Hyde's Tower of Flame, I can burn one of these to have him respawn, and the enemies in the area have also increased, since Hyde's Tower of Flame is essentially on New Game Plus 1 difficulty. This adds a ton of replayability to your initial playthrough, as you can use these to continually farm boss souls or fight a boss all over again if that's your jam. The last thing I wanted to touch on is the changes that were made to the healing system. Gone are the days of having 10 Estus flasks at your disposal and being able to sip up that precious Sunny D whenever you feel like it. DS2 starts you off with a whopping 1 Estus flask and a nearby hidden Estus flask shard to get you a second one. However, the devs didn't leave you hanging out to dry. They introduced something new called Life Gems, a consumable and nearly infinite resource for you. It differs from the Estus flask in that it produces a slow healing effect over time, contrary to the Estus flask that fills you up much quicker. I prefer to use a large stock of Life Gems and my Estus flasks depending on the amount of immediate danger I'm in. This new system also continues a trend in Dark Souls 2 of giving the player the freedom of choice to choose their playstyle. You don't have to invest in thousands of souls and life gems at the beginning of the game if you don't want to. You can hunt for a lot of the Estus shards and increase your flasks on hand pretty easily. However, if you prefer to take the safer route, you can buy as many of these bad boys as you want once you get to the merchant from Forest of the Fallen Giants to move to Majula by exhausting her dialogue. This freedom of choice would be one of the driving factors to the immense replayability of Dark Souls 2 as well. Dark Souls 2 offers a lot in terms of replayability. With the large variety of swords, axes, great swords, hammers, fist weapons, spells, and hexes, it's highly unlikely you'll use every class of weapon in just one playthrough. Combine this with the deep, complex lore often revealed through NPC interactions and item descriptions, and it's clear that this game was designed to be explored multiple times. Drangleic is a sprawling kingdom full of secrets, so it's common to find things in a second or third playthrough that you missed before. Playing through the game as different classes feels like an entirely different experience. When playing as a melee build, typically speccing into strength or dexterity, you have to become very familiar with boss attack timings since you're fighting up close and personal. But when you're playing as a caster build, speccing into intelligence or faith, your main focus shifts to creating space between you and the boss so you can fling spells or hexes at them. The bosses remain the same, but the playstyle changes dramatically. And that's just a general overview. Each individual class of weapon brings even more variety and strategies. You wouldn't use a halberd the same way you would use a dagger. Power stancing was a new build mechanic introduced in DS2 that absolutely changed the way dual wielding worked and improved the replayability and build variety even further. In previous games, you could wield 2 weapons at the same time, but they retained their original moveset and would work independent of each other. In DS2, if you are wielding 2 weapons of the same class and have 1.5 times the base stat requirements for the weapons, you could power stance them, effectively giving you a new moveset using your L1 and L2 attacks respectively. Power stancing would go on to be a huge feature in Elden Ring, and it's safe to say that it was absolutely monumental innovation in this game. Throughout my run-through gathering footage for this video, I power stanced Great Swords plus 10, and it was absolutely the most fun that I've had in this game. Dark Souls 2 introduced another incredible build mechanic not available in Demon's Souls or DS1 that further boosted replayability: the power to respec. Gone are the days of having to create 6 different characters to try out new builds and playstyles. Now you can reset your levels back to the character's base stats and reassign your hard-earned soul levels however you want. Oh, you just realized 20 hours into your run that you really need to level up your ADP from 5 because you're dying from a lack of iframes? Just bring a soul vessel to the old ladies and things betwixt and they'll fix that right up. In all seriousness, respecking was a huge innovation for the series and became a feature in later titles like Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring. See, Dark Souls 2 really isn't all that bad. And I know you're probably wondering, McNaldos, why are you talking about more mechanical innovations in the replayability and build variety section? And that's because I want to, so suck it up. Dark Souls 2 was the first game in the franchise that I played, and I owe my love to the Soulsborne Hero Ring series to this game. I vividly remember my first time playing. I went straight to Hades Tower of Flame and was immediately in awe of the beautiful atmosphere, and seriously mad at the old knights there. I remember it taking me several lives just to kill the very first one. Eventually, I made my way to the Dragon Rider, but after dying so many times in a row, I felt completely discouraged. I actually quit the game for a while because I didn't think I could do it. After some Googling, I found out that you're supposed to head to the Forest of the Fallen Giants first, and that there was NPC summons available to help if you're human. After several attempts, I finally beat the last giant and was immediately filled with confidence that would soon be shattered by the pursuer. I spent subsequent hours, days, weeks Googling strategies for the bosses that followed, and I eventually managed to beat the game. When I finally did, a lasting feeling of dread came over me. I was proud of my accomplishment, but also so sad to feel like it was over. I wanted more areas to explore, more YouTube videos to watch about the lore. I just wanted more, but at the time, there wasn't anything else. Then, after returning to Majula in my first completed playthrough, there it was. The option to start a new journey through the power of New Game Plus. I think on my first character I got to NG +3 or +4 before retiring it and trying out some new builds. I have so much love and nostalgia for this game, it's insane, and it's what keeps me coming back to it. Dark Souls 2 is a comfort game for me. It's something I play when I'm feeling depressed or when I just want something familiar. Of course, the flaws can be annoying, and I recognize that this game has issues. It has a lot of issues, but that doesn't affect my deep love for it. It's strange to look back at a game that caused me so much frustration at first and now see it as something I turn to for relaxation and comfort. But that's the beautiful duality of this series. Yes, of course the games are difficult, but there's comfort in knowing that it's okay to suck. I'm not being judged for struggling in these games. Struggling is actually the norm. It's not typical for someone to pick up any of the Dark Souls games and breeze through them without experience. And yet, there's that subtle pull that keeps bringing us back. After giving up the first time, I remember thinking about the game for days afterwards. I wanted to be good at it. I really wanted to love it. All my friends were talking about how amazing it was. But it wasn't until I put in the time and effort that I truly began to enjoy it. I had to suck. I had to go through the uncomfortable learning curve of dying to the same boss 18 times in a row before finally learning how to block, dodge, or roll through the attacks. I had to learn to love Dark Souls 2, and now that I've put the labor in, I am forever willing to die on this hill for the game. Dark Souls 2 is a flawed masterpiece, and it's my favorite game in the entire series hands down. I would be lying if I said the rose-colored glasses of nostalgia doesn't cloud my judgment a little bit, but this game just holds such a special place in my heart for so many reasons, many of which we just had the pleasure of hearing me ramble about. But you're probably asking yourself, McNaldos, why did you only discuss the base game without any DLC? And to that I say, the DLC for this game is some of the best of the series, and I feel like it deserves its own video to go through. It would honestly make this video too long to talk about everything I'd like to, and it would be a disservice to cut that section short. I would love to know your thoughts though about DS2 down in the comments. Please let me know if you share the same sentiments that I do, or you can let me know if I've officially lost my mind to Hollowing. I would love for you to subscribe too for more Dark Souls content in the future, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Peace!